if you are working on a scientific paper where you need to work in a graphics, then you have to go through this tutorial. I hope after going to this tutorial you will be able to illustrate your data, to illustrate your scientific data in a professional looking way. So in this tutorial we will cover the philosophy of graphics, what are tables, how we can illustrate, how we can put our data into the tables, figures, and the use of colors in different type of graphics. And along with that we will cover some free graphic tools, and we will also cover some free applications. We will create some demos that how we can create our graphics or tables or flow charts in the free available softwares. So what is graphics actually? Graphics is a powerful storytelling tool. It saves the space, it assists the reader to understand the crust of the paper, it brings the crust of the paper into the front, it shortens the paper, it also saves the time. So why we need the graphics in our research paper? We need the graphics in our research paper because it depicts the complex data and the relationship between the complex data. Because if you illustrate the complex relationship of the data, the complex relationship of the statistic and different parameters into text, then this will be difficult for you to explain and even very hard for the reader to understand it. To reduce the reading time by summarizing the highlighting key findings or trends so they are easily visible. As I discussed that the graphics bring the crust of the paper, the crust of the article into the front of the reader. So this saves the reader time. Instead of wasting time to reading all the paragraphs, to such some points in the articles, they just read it from the summaries, from the tables, and from the different type of figures or graphs, etc. It also reduces the total number of words count, because when you explain the complex relationship in a text, this will need a lot of time, this will need a lot of space. So this will save the time, this will save the reader's time too. So what type of graphics we usually use in the research paper, in our illustrations or any other document? For example, we use tables, we use figures, we use flowchart, and sometimes we show the summary of the any particular paragraph, any particular section in a label wise. So we also use the flow line. For example, if we are telling a story, or we are defining something historically, or we are defining some historical events, then we can put a flow line to easily illustrate, to easily explore what the writer want to say. And decision tree, in the decision tree, it is just like a F and FL structure, which go in the way according to the condition, according to the logic conditions. So what we have to do with the graphics, it is especially important that what are the certain points which we have to avoid during designing these illustrations. You have to keep in mind one thing, that when someone click on your paper, when someone click on your article, he doesn't read your paper at first. He will look at your title, they will look at your abstract. After that, after opening the paper, they will look at your graphics, they will read the tables, figures, graphics, and they will take some crux of the paper. So if you have designed a powerful figures, graphics and tables, such like graphics which will attract the reader, which will hook the reader, definitely they will read the paper, definitely they will start reading your whole paper, otherwise not. So you have to be careful while designing the graphics. So what we have to do while designing our graphics, as we discussed, that there are a number of formats: table, figures, flow charts, flow line, decision tree, etc. So what is your data and which type of data format is particularly matching with it? Either you are able to explain it easily in the table or in the figure and in the graphics, etc., or in the flow line. So you have to carefully select the data type, the flow, the graphic type where your data will perfectly match. Too large to follow or too simple to be explained in the text. If your flow chart is too large, then reader will not be able to understand it. They will not be able to follow it. And if your figures, graphics are too simple, then you can simply explain it in 1 or 2 or in 3 sentences. Then explain in the sentence, explain in the text instead of putting the graphics into the table. Shading and bodies are definitely important. You have to take care about that. The shading and graphics must match the layout of the table, layout of the page which you are using. Not explanatory without text. You have to be careful. If your table is not explanatory solely without the text, without the paper, then reader will not be able to get some points from your paper. And the parameters, labels, and different type of units which you are using in the paper, these all things should be clearly mentioned in the paper. And if you include an important factors in the tables or in the graphics, definitely they will not be readable by the reader. And unconventional fonts and colors, lower quality, definitely if the quality is lower, the reader will not be able to identify the correct points which you have defined. Non-explanatory label and use of abbreviations. Definitely reader, you do your tables, figures in the first. So the abbreviations which are not related to their domain, they will not be able that what you have written, what do you mean from these abbreviations. So what you have to do, what are the tips which you have to follow? Let's talk about these tips. First, you have to decide that it is really important to present your data in a graphics. If it is really important, then go toward it. If it is not important at all, then you haven't to design some graphics for the paper. Secondly, if it is really important to put a graphic in the paper, then what type of graphic you have to use for your paper? So you have to design, you have to be careful about that. Every graphics should provide necessary information. So therefore first select the necessary information, then select the best graphics method. You have to confirm that your graphics is solely understandable. Any person who is not related to your domain, if you give your graphic to him or her and he easily understands it, this means that your graphics is easily understandable. Should not include the long sentences in your figures. This will detract your reader. And so how many graphics we should use in our paper? The rule says that this shouldn't increase the 1/3 of your paper. For example, if you are writing a paper which have 9 papers, then your graphic shouldn't increase the 3 pages. This is not hard and fast rule, and I don't exactly agree with it, because 3 pages of graphics in a 9 pages article is too long. This shouldn't be like that. Similarly, your graphics, your tables, graphs, etc. should be clear. Understandability, even out of context, as I discussed it, shouldn't account for more than 1/3 of the manuscript. A graphic reds and green colors. This is very important because in our society there are too many peoples who are color blind. They are not able to differentiate between green and red colors, so you have to avoid these colors overlapping each other, because if they overlaps each other, the major community will not be able to get your point. Your tables, your graphics, your figures must be cited in the table. Once you put your all your graphics in the paper, you have to revise all these things, that either you have cited every figure, every table in the text, and is it sequentially as the graphics are displayed in the paper. Similarly, it is cited sequentially in the text too. And you have to proofread your every figure, every table before submitting your paper for publications. So captions is also very important. Of every figure, every table, every algorithm have their own captions, so your captions should be clear, it should be explainable. If there are any abbreviations you are going to use, then you have to clearly write the abbreviation, because this is not clear for the new reader and the reader who are not related to your domain to get the point, to understand the point. And if you are using any unit, then you have to explain it. Either you are using a second, you are using a centimeter, you are using any other thing, you have to clearly explain it, that for this parameter we are using this particular parameter, and include the experimental detail in the tables or in the figures if you have performed any experimentations. So this was all about the figures, some basic tips to do or not to do, tips about the graphics for our research paper. And in the next video we will particularly discuss the figures, that how we should use the figures in our research paper, what are the some important tips which we have to follow to design, to put figures in our research paper. Thank you so much.